Hi, this is our first ever St George's bedtime story, and I am going to start us off with this one. This is one of my favourite books, and I've had this since I started to be a teacher. It's called Gumboot's Chocolatey Day, and I love this because it's got two of my favourite things in it. I love little pigs, and I love chocolate. So here we go, Gumboot's Chocolatey Day. Gumboot was having a chocolatey sort of day. His aunt had been to visit him, and she had given Gumboot a big bar of his favourite chocolate. "Don't eat it all at once," she'd said. To start with, there had been 15 chunks of chocolate on Gumboot's chocolate bar. Gumboot didn't know this because he could only count to 10. But what he did know was that he liked chocolate very much. That was why there were now only 3 pieces left. Next to chocolate, what Gumboot liked best in the world was riding his bike. So he tucked his chocolate safely into the basket and off he went to the park. In the park, Gumboot stopped to watch the ducks on the lake. Out in the middle, 3 of them were paddling about with their heads under the water and their tails stuck up in the air. Their curly-tailed bottoms bobbing up and down made Gumboot giggle. Gumboot wondered how long they could stay down. He began to count from 1 to 10. When he reached 10, the last duck was still down, so he began to count again. Gumboot counted up to 10 3 times before the last duck popped up out of the water. "The winner!" shouted Gumboot across the lake. The duck looked at Gumboot and quacked happily. "I wonder why ducks never smile," thought Gumboot to himself. Perhaps it was because of their stiff beaks. He tried making his snout stiff to see what it felt like. Further along, a little girl was throwing bread to the ducks. "I wonder if ducks like chocolate," thought Gumboot. Gumboot tried to break off a tiny piece of chocolate to throw to the ducks. But chocolate bars will only break where they want to, and in the end, Gumboot had to make do with a whole chunk. "I suppose it's worth it," said Gumboot as he took aim. But Gumboot's aim was not very good. The piece of chocolate went straight up into the air and landed at the water's edge with a delicious sounding plop. The ducks ignored it. Gumboot was quite pleased. He ran to the spot, fished out the chocolate and popped it safely in his mouth where it belonged. "Ducks don't eat chocolate," said a voice. It was the little girl. She was holding out a large piece of bread. "I'll swap you." Gumboot thought for a moment. There were only 2 pieces of chocolate left. "All right then," he said. "You can have 1 piece and I'll have the other." The little girl put the chocolate straight into her mouth and gave Gumboot the bread. Gumboot and the little girl began to feed the ducks. After a while, Gumboot noticed that it was always the same ones who rushed to the bread and grabbed it. So he tried throwing pieces of bread first one way and then another, which made the ducks paddle backwards and forwards, flapping and quacking. They made such a noise that soon all the other ducks on the lake were swimming towards them to see what the fuss was about. Gumboot was having fun. Ducks and bread were flying in all directions. He tried throwing high throws, then he tried long throws, then he broke the bread into lots of little pieces and threw them all at once. "Get ready, everyone," he shouted. "Here goes the last piece." The last piece flew high over the lake and landed in the water with a deep bloop. That made a funny noise, thought Gumboot. Then he realised that something awful had happened. Something terrible. In his excitement, he'd thrown his chocolate into the lake. His last piece of chocolate. His only piece of chocolate. "Never mind," said the little girl. But Gumboot did mind. He minded very much. He wandered miserably back along the path, thinking about his last piece of chocolate lying at the bottom of the lake. It made him feel very hungry. A tear rolled down his cheek and splashed to the ground. "Goodbye," called the little girl, but Gumboot didn't seem to hear. A duck quacked behind him, but Gumboot didn't feel like playing with ducks anymore. The duck quacked again, this time more loudly. It seemed to be following him. Gumboot, look! The little girl was calling and pointing excitedly. Look in its beak! Gumboot turned and looked at the duck. It was the champion diver that he'd watched earlier, and in its beak it had something square and brown. It was Gumboot's last piece of chocolate. Gumboot took the chocolate and patted the duck on the head. The duck swam round in a little circle, quacking loudly, and then headed off across the lake. To Gumboot, it seemed that this time the duck was definitely smiling. "Goodbye," called Gumboot to the little girl. She smiled back at him. Gumboot smiled too, all the way home. What a happy thing chocolate is, thought Gumboot as he put the last piece in his mouth. It tasted a little pondy, but otherwise delicious.